Now, research for the BBC suggests that 60% of disabled people who use social care have had difficulty getting hold of essentials such as medication during the pandemic. The survey by YouGov was commissioned to mark the 25th anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act, which established legal rights for people with disabilities. The government has defended its record on support, saying it's fully considered the needs of disabled people throughout the pandemic. Well, we can discuss this further with Adam Pearson, who's a journalist, actor and disability rights campaigner, Richard Butchins, who's an award-winning documentary maker and artist, and Victoria Oruwari, who's a soprano singer who lost her eyesight when she was 6. Good morning to you all. Very good of you to join us all on BBC News. We're talking about two major things this morning. One is the anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act, and then two, about the situation as it is now in the middle of the pandemic. I wonder if I could come to you first, Adam Pearson, and just ask you what you think that, 25 years on after this law was enacted, do you think that we have reached equality for the disabled community?
No, I think we're nowhere near. Even the fact that disability, the DDA, is only 25 years old, that's quite young when you compare it to the other equality legislations that came into play. For context, that means, and for the first 10 years of my life, I had no legal rights as a disabled child. So no, I think we've still got a very, very long way to go to get equality for the disabled community.
Did that materially affect you when you were a child?
It did. It meant going through schools when it came to transferring from primary to secondary. My disability could be used as a factor to say no. And then even when the law came in, it was still relatively new and no one knew how to use it. So in essence, it was, and it still is to a degree, a little bit toothless. And it's always, disability is always at the bottom of the pecking order or the totem pole when it comes to equality.
Richard Butchins, I was wondering if I could bring you in. What sort of challenges do you face as a filmmaker and a disabled person?
The same challenges that all disabled people and filmmakers face, but combined, I suppose. I mean, it's a strange question insofar as I suppose professionally, people assume that I probably can't do things, or it's been a bit more difficult for me to make headway because people make presumptions about disability and disabled people. And I suppose the legislation was meant to help that. Whether it did or not is debatable.
It's debatable. Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, it was a landmark piece of legislation when it came in. I mean, it recognised that disabled people needed legal protection and support, but it was more or less unenforceable, and nobody knew how to deal with that, as Adam said. And it was updated in 2010, the Equalities Act, and things have got better since then. But I think the issue isn't so much legal protection as a kind of change of attitude within society and how it looks at disabled people.
Victoria Oruwari, would you agree with that? Would you say that it's cultural as much as legal?
It is cultural as much as legal, and equality will continue to be an oasis that we aim for until every citizen sees access as their responsibility. I feel like sometimes people think, okay, disabled people, only government look after them. It's not my problem, or that sort of thing. And yes, there are laws in place to ensure that all public services and educational facilities are to include access at the core of their operation. It's not fully effective yet.
And in terms of attitudes, Victoria, do you think that they have changed over time?
To an extent, amongst people who know about disability, but it's still a situation where you're still, as a disabled person, I feel like I have to constantly educate people about my needs, and sometimes it puts me under a considerable amount of pressure, especially if I'm having to work in the same environment.
Adam, can I go back to you? Adam Pearson, you're an actor by profession, and you've highlighted the boundaries that face disabled actors. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
So when it comes to being a disabled actor, very often disability in general is misrepresented in films, and it's used as either a trope of victimhood or villainy and tragedy. And also, we have a almost pandemic of able-bodied actors creeping up to play disabled characters. And again, if you put that on parity with other protected characteristics, this idea that anyone can play anything, that is a common argument to justify able-bodied actors creeping up. You wouldn't, for example, black up Adam Sandler to play Nelson Mandela and say anyone can play anything. And so why is disability any different? Olivier did it, blacked up in 1965 and won an Oscar. Does that mean it still has a place in 2020? Absolutely not.
And how has the pandemic affected your work?
I think it's affected the whole industry, to be honest. Everything kind of ground to a halt. I had a couple of projects that were in the pipeline and in development that have had to be rescheduled, but that's completely fine. If me making a film a year later than I scheduled means that we can all move on and get over this awful year that we've had quicker, then that's something that I'm more than happy to do. Socially, I think the pandemic has had more effects on me than it has professionally. The amount of times I have to pop out and go to the shops, because I'm also a carer for my father part-time, and I have just general members of the public who don't know me coming up and telling me that I should be shielding or self-isolating. It's insane. The amount of people that have become doctors or immunologists over the past 9 months is ridiculous.
Richard
Butchins, is that something that's familiar to you?
Not as directly as it would be for Adam, but I think I have noticed that, I'm exempt from wearing a mask, for example, and actually most of the time I just wear one because it's irritating to have people coming up to you telling you you should be, and then having to explain and so on. So it's easy just to stick it on. I think I've found the work thing's been difficult, and that's of course the same for everybody. We're all of a sudden we're all doing a lot less work. One of the good things, though, that's come out of this is the sudden working from home is possible. As disabled people, we've been on about this for years. We should better work from home. We could do it. Look, and as soon as the non-disabled needed it, it started to happen. And I think that's actually quite a good thing, really, that now we can work from home and it's considered kind of acceptable and normal.
And although you sacrifice all those good things about the workplace, companionship, community, gossip?
Well, yeah, gossip, is that a good thing? I'm not sure. You sacrifice some of that, but then you still have that when you need it. It's not exclusively everyone locked in their houses. You still need to have that interaction when you need it. I think, but what I'm saying is it's opened up that world of work in a way that I think could be, I don't know if it will be, but it could be more useful for the disabled because people are now familiar with it and it doesn't seem like such an impossible thing.
And Victoria, I understand that you've decided not to go out alone during the pandemic. Can you explain why?
Yes, I decided not to go out alone during the pandemic because as a blind person, my ability to social distance is totally impossible. And it's highly dependent on other people being aware of the social distancing rules because I can't see if anyone is close to me to judge how far away or how close I am to people. And sometimes people have, good nature and they come up to you and they want to help and they grab my arm and I'm like, no, this is not the right time to do that. But it's too late by that point. So I make sure that when I'm going out, I'm either with a PA or with somebody else who can support me.
So they're well-intentioned, but in fact, potentially doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it's really frightening because it's totally limited the things I can and can't do. So it's really amazing that we have the internet because it's kept me in touch with, people that I work with and, organizations that I've worked with in the past, I still work with, have done such a great job of keeping us all in connection with each other and boosting our morale during this very difficult time.
Well, that is good to hear. Thank you so much, all three of you. Victoria Oruwari, Richard Butchins and Adam Pearson. There they come. Slightly late, but there they all are. Thank you so much again.